Hello, my name is Jasper. Right now, I'm sitting on a secluded beach with my boss, the formidable and highly respected Lydia Hargrove. I have to admit, my life has taken the most unexpected turn. If someone had asked me just a short while ago where I'd be today, I would have joked about rushing to grab a coffee or confirming reservations. Certainly not stranded on a remote island in the middle of nowhere. My official title is Personal Assistant, which is just a fancy way of saying I handle everything Lydia doesn't have the time or patience for. The coffee runs, scheduling meetings, taking notes, even picking up her dry cleaning. It's routine work, but it pays the bills. Lydia is the CEO of Hargrove Financial Services, a powerhouse firm in New York. She's elegant, sophisticated, and carries a reputation for being as cold and unapproachable as a glacier. From the very first day I started working for her, Lydia has always kept crystal clear professional boundaries. Our interactions were usually limited to brief nods, concise exchanges, and the occasional disapproving glance. We rarely spoke beyond work tasks, and even then, her communication was precise and distant. To say there was a gap between us would be an understatement. There was a full canyon of differences separating our lives and personalities. Earlier today, we boarded her sleek private jet, headed to Miami for an important client meeting. It was my first time in a private plane, and despite feeling a bit out of place amid the polished leather seats and impeccable decor, I tried to play it cool. Lydia settled in quickly, tapping away on her tablet, lost in her meticulously organized world. I chose a seat across the aisle, stealing nervous glances out the window as thick clouds gathered on the horizon. Halfway through the flight, the sky turned a deep, threatening gray, and the plane began to shake lightly. At first, I tried to ignore it, convinced the turbulence was temporary. But minutes dragged on, and the jolts grew stronger. Anxiety gripped my chest. I glanced at Lydia, half expecting to see her as rattled as I was, but she remained perfectly composed, even if I noticed her hand clutching her tablet a little tighter than usual. The intercom crackled suddenly, the pilot's voice steady but tense. We're encountering unexpected weather. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated. The plane lurched violently right after those words, nearly throwing me from my seat. My heart pounded, panic overriding my rational mind. "What's happening?" I shouted, gripping the armrests until my knuckles turned white. Lydia finally looked up, meeting my gaze for a brief moment. Her expression was unreadable, but I saw her jaw clenched, betraying the fear she hid beneath her flawless composure. "It's just turbulence," she said calmly, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. Another brutal shake rocked the aircraft, this time accompanied by a deafening crack of thunder. The cabin lights flickered, plunging us into brief darkness before flickering back on. I stared at Lydia, wide-eyed, searching for any sign of reassurance, but she stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the cockpit door. Without warning, the plane plunged into a steep descent, the terrifying freefall sensation twisting my stomach. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, swinging wildly. Instinct took over. I yanked one down and clamped it over my face, my breaths coming in ragged, desperate gasps. Lydia froze for a split second, her eyes wide with shock. Without thinking, I reached out, grabbed another mask, and thrust it into her palm. "Put it on!" I yelled urgently. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before complying, her hands trembling slightly. Our eyes met again, and in that instant, the barriers between boss and assistant vanished. We were just two scared people facing the unknown. The intercom crackled once more, barely audible over the storm's roar. "We're going down." The pilot's voice echoed ominously, sending a chill down my spine. Lydia reached out instinctively, gripping my forearm with surprising strength, her nails digging into my skin. "Hold on," she whispered urgently, fear finally flashing openly in her eyes. The impact came suddenly, violently. Metal groaned and tore around us as the plane slammed into the ground. Everything happened at once. The screech of twisting metal, the shatter of glass, the crushing force of being hurled forward. Darkness swallowed my senses as I blacked out briefly. When I came to, disoriented and dazed, I was still buckled into my seat, the cabin warped and exposed to the elements. Lydia stirred beside me, moaning softly, clearly concussed. Gently, I unbuckled myself, staggering to my feet to steady her. Lydia. My voice shook as I placed a light hand on her shoulder. She winced slightly, opening her eyes and scanning her surroundings in confusion. Are we alive? Her voice was faint, almost childlike. In a manner of speaking, yes, I replied, glancing around to assess our situation. We'd crash-landed on a stretch of sand, with palm trees lining the horizon. Lush vegetation suggested we'd gone down on a tropical island, beautiful, but utterly isolated. The reality hit me like a wave. We need help, I murmured, pulling out my phone only to find no signal. Lydia checked hers, her face paling as she realized the same. No service, she muttered, her composure cracking just a bit. We climbed cautiously from the wreckage, the warm, humid air enveloping us immediately. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the gentle crash of waves on the nearby shore. No signs of civilization anywhere, just endless ocean, stretching in every direction. Lydia stood rigid beside me, struggling to maintain her usual poised exterior. We're completely cut off, she admitted at last, a hint of panic edging her voice. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm despite the dread building inside. Yes, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. No rescue, no communication. Lydia turned to me, realization dawning on her face. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she had no control. Her eyes searched mine desperately, seeking answers I didn't have. I knew what she was thinking, what we were both thinking. I took a deep breath, holding her gaze steadily. We'll have to rely on each other to survive. She hesitated briefly, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of vulnerability, of depending on someone like me, her younger, less experienced assistant. But there was no alternative. After a moment, she nodded slowly, reluctantly accepting our shared reality. You're right, she said softly, her voice barely audible over the waves. We're in this together. As we stood side by side, staring out at the vast ocean, a sobering certainty settled deep in me. Our survival now depended entirely on one another. The harsh reality of our predicament struck us the next morning. At sunrise, near the wreckage, a heavy silence hung over the crash site. The day before, we'd made the grim discovery that the pilots hadn't survived the impact, their bodies now respectfully covered near the fuselage. Now, Lydia and I were truly alone, completely alone in an untouched corner of the world, with no way to call for help. After a tense, nearly silent breakfast of emergency protein bars scavenged from the debris, I broke the quiet, trying to sound confident. We need fresh water. That's the top priority. Lydia didn't look at me right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, her jaw set, her composure snapping back into place. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm and decisive. We should stay near the beach. There might be freshwater runoff nearby, and we can signal passing ships from the shore. I don't think ships pass by here often, I countered, holding back the frustration in my voice. It's more practical to head inland. Streams or pools are usually farther from the coast. She shot me a skeptical look, her brows furrowing, clearly annoyed. And you know this from experience? Have you been stranded before? I swallowed a sharp retort. Listen, Lydia, I've done some wilderness camping in my life. Trust me, fresh water generally flows downhill from the interior. She straightened, that familiar, defiant spark crossing her face. I know you're trying to help, Jasper, but I'm used to making critical decisions every day. Let's stick to the coast until we're sure we have no choice. I exhaled sharply, fighting the irritation rising in me. If we stay here and there's no fresh water, we'll waste valuable time. Dehydration sets in fast. Lydia shook her head dismissively, her patience visibly thinning. I'm confident we'll find what we need near the shoreline. We'll do it my way. Her superior tone stung deeply, but I chose my words carefully. You're my boss back home, Lydia, but we're not in the office. Survival isn't about hierarchy. It's about common sense. She narrowed her eyes, her voice turning icy. Fine. If you think you know better, go ahead and waste your time. I'll stick to my plan. Frustrated, I turned abruptly, deciding further argument was pointless. Fine. Good luck. We parted without another word, each determined to prove the other wrong. Lydia strode purposefully along the coast, searching among rocks and coastal plants, while I pushed into the dense foliage, resolved to find proof for my point. The jungle was thick, oppressively humid, filled with unfamiliar sounds. My anger faded gradually, replaced by a creeping anxiety. I started doubting myself. What if Lydia was right? What if I found nothing? An hour passed with no luck. My throat was parched, and frustration surged back. Just as doubt crept deeper into my mind, I spotted low bushes covered in bright red berries. Cautiously, I picked one, hesitating. My limited survival knowledge warned that not all berries were edible, but their vivid colors offered hope that food might be plentiful here. Suddenly, a distant cry snapped my attention. Lydia's voice strained and frightened. My heart raced with sudden worry. Without hesitation, I sprinted toward the shore, ignoring branches whipping my face. I burst onto the beach, scanning frantically for any sign of her. Her voice rang out again, farther along the coast, near a cluster of tall fruit trees. I ran toward the sound, breathless. When I reached her, Lydia was perched awkwardly on the sand, wincing in obvious pain, blood visible on her ankle. Above her, ripe fruits dangled gently in the breeze, just out of reach. "What happened?" I asked quickly, kneeling beside her. Her eyes stubbornly avoided mine, embarrassment clear. "I was climbing for those fruits, and my foot slipped," she admitted reluctantly, her voice unusually small. "Let me see," I said gently, examining the injury. Her ankle was badly scraped but didn't seem broken. "You're lucky it's not worse." She tensed at my touch, clearly uncomfortable with her vulnerability. "I didn't need you to come running," she said, her tone trying for defiance but coming out muffled. Ignoring her protests, I tore a strip from my shirt sleeve and wrapped it carefully around her ankle, tying it just tight enough to staunch the bleeding. "You didn't have to climb up there," I told her softly, keeping my voice neutral. "We can figure things out together." Climbing alone wasn't smart. Lydia looked away, her jaw tightening. "I know you can handle yourself. But we're stuck here, Lydia. We have to rely on each other, not compete." She didn't respond right away. Her eyes stayed fixed stubbornly on the distant waves. The silence hung heavy between us. Finally, she took a deep breath, seeming to steady herself. "Did you find anything inland?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "Not yet," I admitted honestly, "but there are berry bushes that might be edible. I'll double-check to be sure, and we'll keep looking." Lydia nodded slowly, looking thoughtful. Her stubborn mask cracked just a little, revealing a quiet uncertainty. "I thought this would be easier," she said softly, as if to herself. "Survival isn't easy," I replied kindly, "but it's possible if we work together." She finally met my eyes, her usual hard expression softening slightly. For the first time since the crash, I saw genuine doubt and vulnerability in her gaze. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, hesitation clear in her voice, though she masked her discomfort quickly. "I shouldn't have dismissed your ideas." Surprised by her unexpected apology, I felt my own anger melt away. "It's okay. We're both scared. Let's just move forward from here." She nodded silently, rising cautiously and wincing as she tested her ankle. Instinctively, I moved to steady her, but she raised a hand lightly, signaling she could manage. Still, I noticed she leaned a bit closer as we started walking back to our makeshift shelter. That evening on the island, we shared a quiet meal, reflecting on the tough days ahead. Lydia sat across from me, pensive but calmer. The cold barrier she'd put up earlier was crumbling slowly. Despite her silence, her gaze drifted to me now and then, with subtle, unspoken gratitude. In the flickering firelight, I realized how much everything had changed in a single day. Our pride had nearly cost us dearly, but perhaps this hard lesson had taught us both a measure of humility. As darkness settled around us, Lydia finally spoke, her voice steady but gentler than usual. "Tomorrow, we'll look for water together. You lead." Her concession surprised me, but I welcomed it warmly. Together, I agreed, knowing we'd both learned something valuable that day. Survival wasn't about proving who was right. It was about trusting the person beside you, no matter the differences. The days after our argument transformed our situation in profound ways. Lydia, while keeping her natural air of authority, began letting me take the lead more openly on our survival plans. We quickly found a steady rhythm, dividing responsibilities. I handled building the shelter, drawing on old memories of camping with my dad. Lydia managed our limited food and water supplies, applying her strategic mindset meticulously to ration provisions and stretch our resources. Under the relentless tropical sun, I spent the following days gathering branches, palm fronds, and vines to erect a sturdy shelter. It was grueling, sweat-soaked work, but strangely rewarding. I chose a flat spot slightly inland, shielded by thick underbrush and shaded by towering palms. Slowly, a solid little hut took shape, blending into the dense green foliage around us. Meanwhile, Lydia approached our food stores almost scientifically. She cataloged edible fruits with care, sorting out the questionable ones, and strictly portioned our water intake. Each evening, she sat quietly near the hut, updating me on our supplies in a calm, analytical way, never letting emotions creep into her tone. But beneath her composure, I sensed an underlying tension, a weight of worry she refused to share. One evening, as twilight fell, bathing the island in golden hues, I'd finished adding palm fronds to reinforce the roof. I stepped back proudly, surveying the completed structure. "It's no luxury hotel, but it'll keep us dry," I remarked, wiping sweat from my brow. Lydia looked up from the basket of fruits she was sorting and nodded with genuine appreciation. "It's impressive. You're good at this," she admitted softly. "Thanks," I replied, a bit caught off guard by her sincerity. "My dad took me camping every summer. I guess it stuck." She fell silent for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. Finally, she stood and came to sit beside me on a fallen log near the shelter. For a while, we watched the sunset's light dance across the ocean's surface in companionable quiet. "My dad never did anything like that with me," Lydia said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, almost meditative. "He was always working. Ambition runs deep in my family." I looked at her, surprised by the unexpected glimpse into her life. Until now, she'd shared almost nothing personal. "Ambition isn't necessarily a bad thing," I said cautiously. She let out a small, bitter laugh. "No, but it can leave a person very alone." I hesitated, unsure if she wanted a response. "You seem to have it all," I said at last, choosing my words carefully. "At least, from the outside." Lydia sighed softly, her gaze still on the ocean. "Appearances can be deceiving, Jasper. Success often costs more than people realize." She paused, as if debating whether to continue. When she spoke again, her tone was more vulnerable, softer than I'd ever heard. "I was married once. We met early in our careers, two ambitious, driven people. It seemed perfect at first, two souls climbing the ladder together. But as success grew, so did the distance between us. Eventually, our marriage was just a business arrangement. Two strangers sharing a roof." Her voice cracked slightly, revealing hidden pain. "In the end, he left, and I buried myself in work." "I'm sorry," I said gently, touched by her honesty. She shook her head lightly, brushing off my sympathy. "That's why I became like this," she said, gesturing dismissively at herself. "Cold and distant, as they say. It's easier to build walls than risk getting hurt again." I didn't reply immediately, absorbing her words. This confession explained so much about her rigid professionalism, her guarded nature. "Sometimes, walls protect us," I said finally, softly, "but they isolate us from others, too." Lydia turned to me, her expression unreadable for a long moment. "Maybe," she murmured, almost to herself, before standing abruptly. "We should get some rest. It's been a long day." Night fell quickly, bringing a sudden chill to the humid air. We retreated to our modest hut, settling in silence on opposite sides, separated by the quiet tension of the truths she'd shared. We hadn't slept long when a distant rumble woke me. At first, I thought it was a dream, but the sound grew louder, closer. Rain began pounding the shelter violently, wind howling fiercely through the trees. "Lydia!" I shouted over the deafening roar of the storm, bolting upright. She sat up quickly, alarm crossing her face. "What's happening?" "A tropical storm," I replied, panic rising fast as the fragile hut shook under brutal gusts. "Stay close to me." The wind howled louder, battering the structure. Palm fronds ripped free, leaving gaps where rain lashed in. Lydia edged closer instinctively, her eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, I reached out, pulling her firmly into my arms, shielding her from the elements. "I've got you!" I yelled over the chaos, holding her tight as the shelter threatened to collapse. Her fingers clutched my shirt desperately, her face buried against my shoulder, her breaths coming in quick, ragged bursts. For a moment, amid the storm's fury, nothing else mattered but keeping her safe. We huddled together for what felt like an eternity, listening helplessly as the tempest ravaged our surroundings. Finally, the rage eased gradually, the howling winds fading to soft murmurs, and the torrent of rain reducing to a gentle drizzle. When it stopped at last, dawn was breaking. We emerged cautiously, assessing the damage. The island was littered with fallen branches and debris. Our hut was badly battered, but still standing, barely. Lydia stood beside me, silent, visibly shaken but strangely calm. When she finally looked at me, her expression held a depth I'd never seen. Gratitude, vulnerability, and quiet admiration mingled there. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice trembling just a little. "You protected me." I smiled gently, a warmth filling my chest despite our dire circumstances. "We're in this together, remember?" She nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on mine. "It's been a long time since I felt truly safe with anyone, Jasper." Her admission touched me deeply, making me realize the profound trust she'd placed in me during the storm. "I'm glad you feel safe now," I replied softly, sincerity clear in my voice. Lydia turned toward the ocean once more, breathing deeply, her posture finally relaxing. Something subtle but profound had shifted between us, deeper than mere partnership, an unspoken bond forged in shared vulnerability and mutual trust. Standing side by side amid the storm's wreckage, I could feel Lydia's wall of isolation beginning to crumble, replaced by a cautious openness. For the first time in years, she was allowing herself to feel truly safe with someone else. And surprisingly, that someone was me. The days on the island blurred into a simple, almost rhythmic existence. Each morning brought sunlight filtering softly through the leafy canopy, accompanied by birdsong and the gentle lap of waves. Gradually, the initial anxiety and tension we'd felt morphed into quiet acceptance, a mutual understanding of our plight. The lines between boss and assistant dissolved, leaving just Lydia and me, two people learning to survive side by side. Since the storm, something had undeniably changed between us. Lydia was noticeably softer, her voice kinder, her eyes warmer whenever she spoke to me. She began opening up more, revealing layers she'd kept hidden beneath her polished exterior. In return, I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone. Dreams, regrets, unfulfilled ambitions. One afternoon, as we gathered firewood, Lydia turned to me, curiosity in her eyes. "Jasper, if you don't mind me asking, how did you end up as an assistant? You're clearly capable of more." I paused, setting down the branches I'd collected, feeling a bit exposed but comfortable enough to be honest. "I studied business and marketing in college," I began slowly, looking down at the ground. "But after graduation, things got complicated. My dad got sick, so I took the first job I could find to support him. When he passed, I guess I felt stuck." Lydia's expression softened with compassion. "I had no idea." I shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant, though her kindness moved me deeply. "It's fine. Working for you wasn't meant to be permanent, just a way to get back on my feet. But along the way, I forgot how to chase my own dreams." Her eyes searched mine carefully, genuine empathy shining through. "You deserve more than fetching coffee and managing schedules, Jasper. You're talented and resourceful. I hope when we get back, you pick up those dreams again." Hearing those encouraging words from Lydia meant more than she knew. I smiled gratefully, feeling suddenly lighter than I had in years. "Thank you," I said softly, sincerity evident in my voice. In return, Lydia opened up more about herself, sharing stories of her past, her struggles, and the isolation she'd felt climbing the corporate ladder. Each conversation drew us closer, forging a bond stronger than mere partnership or survival necessity. On a sunny afternoon, driven by hunger and the need for fresh food, we headed to a rocky cove on the island's far side to try fishing. Armed with makeshift spears carved from sharpened sticks, we waded knee-deep into crystal-clear water, watching intently for any movement below the surface. Lydia's eyes sparkled with excitement and focus as she advanced, aiming carefully. With surprising agility, she thrust her spear downward, triumphantly surfacing a large silver fish. "Jasper! I got one!" she cried, an enormous smile lighting her face. free of her usual restraint or professionalism. I laughed heartily, genuinely delighted by her joy. Inspired by her success, I tried my hand soon after, spearing another fish to add to our meal. That evening, we grilled our catch over an open fire, savoring every bite of fresh, hot fish as twilight deepened around us. Sitting side by side, we talked easily, laughter flowing freely without the constraints of formalities or titles. For the first time since the crash, neither of us thought about responsibilities, societal expectations, or the pressures waiting back home. As night thickened, conversation faded into comfortable silence while we stared at the flickering flames. Lydia leaned closer, her voice soft and reflective. "You know, Jasper, being stranded here with you has changed something in me. It's made me realize how empty my life was." I turned to her, surprised, but touched by her openness. Maybe this island isn't just a curse. Maybe it's giving us both a chance to start over, to see things more clearly. She nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful and sincere. "I think you're right." We sat in silence for a long while, savoring the peace of each other's presence before finally retreating to our repaired shelter for the night. It felt natural, effortless, a closeness that had grown beyond simple survival camaraderie. But our newfound harmony was shattered brutally later that night. I woke suddenly, sensing something was wrong. Lydia was tossing and turning on her side of the hut, her breathing uneven, her skin flushed and damp even in the cool night air. Alarmed, I moved closer, touching her forehead gently. It burned under my palm. "Lydia," I called softly, trying not to startle her. She opened her eyes slowly, disoriented and weak. "I feel awful," she murmured faintly. I examined her quickly, realizing the small cut from days ago had become infected, now swollen and angrily red. My heart raced with worry, knowing our medical supplies were limited and our knowledge even more so. "You have a high fever," I said urgently, forcing calm into my voice. "We need to cool you down and keep you hydrated." Through that long, anxious night, I tended to her, carefully wetting cloth strips to soothe her brow, coaxing her to sip water, murmuring gentle reassurances whenever she stirred restlessly. My exhaustion was overshadowed by deep concern, knowing how dangerous her condition could become if the fever didn't break soon. At last, as dawn approached, her fever eased slowly, her breathing steadying into deeper rhythms. Relieved but drained, I stayed close, refusing to leave until I was sure she'd be okay. Morning sun filtered through the shelter's cracks, warming the air around us gently. Lydia opened her eyes slowly, confusion briefly crossing her face before clarity returned. She looked down, noticing me slumped beside her, my head resting against the hut wall, clearly worn out from the night. Watching me in silence, her heart filled with a mix of emotions, gratitude, warmth, and newfound respect. For the first time since our professional relationship began, she saw me not as her younger assistant, but as a mature, capable, reliable man who'd cared for her selflessly during one of her most vulnerable moments. Gently, she reached out, touching my arm lightly to wake me. I stirred slowly, blinking sleepily as our eyes met. She offered a soft smile, gratitude shining openly in her gaze. "Thank you, Jasper," she whispered, her voice full of warm sincerity. "I wouldn't have made it through the night without you." I smiled back gently, deeply relieved by her improvement. "I'm just glad you're okay." In that quiet, tender moment, Lydia fully realized how much I'd grown in her eyes, not just a young assistant running errands, but a strong, dependable partner who'd proven he could protect and care for her. She felt something shift deep in her heart, acknowledging the depth of her newfound trust and affection for the man beside her. As the days passed after Lydia's illness, her health improved steadily, bringing relief but also something more complex into our lives. Each day, something subtle changed between us. Neither Lydia nor I acknowledged it openly. Yet it hung in the air, growing quietly, a current of feelings we both sensed but hesitated to voice. We fell easily into routines. Lydia continued monitoring our resources carefully, planning our days meticulously while I maintained the shelter, fetched fresh water, and foraged for food. Our partnership became fluid, intuitive. We knew each other's habits, anticipated thoughts, and started sharing glances and brief touches that lingered a little longer each time. One quiet afternoon, as we explored the area around the crash site again, I stumbled on a significant find, a reflective metal panel from the plane, still intact despite the violent impact. My heart skipped, recognizing it could be our ticket off the island, a perfect signaling device to attract passing planes or ships. I carried it back carefully, showing it to Lydia as she stood quietly near our shelter. As I explained my idea excitedly, detailing how we'd position the reflective surface strategically for maximum visibility, I noticed Lydia staying silent, her eyes shadowed with uncertainty. "Lydia," I asked softly, sensing her hesitation, "this could get us rescued. Isn't that good news?" She hesitated, clearly conflicted. "Of course it is," she replied at last, softly, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. "It's just—" She trailed off, turning slightly away from me, her expression pensive and distant. I stepped closer, concerned by her reaction. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, visibly gathering her courage. When she continued, her voice was calm, thoughtful. "I'm not sure I'm ready to leave, Jasper. It sounds strange, but this island, this life we've built here, it's the most honest and happiest I've felt in years." Her confession caught me off guard, but it resonated deeply. "I understand," I said softly. "It's simple here. No pressures, no roles to uphold." She looked at me carefully, vulnerability filling her eyes. "Exactly. Back home I've built an image, powerful, composed, successful. But behind it all, I was alone, surrounded by people but completely isolated." Her voice softened further, barely a whisper. "I convinced myself loneliness was part of success, the price to pay. But being here with you, I've realized how wrong I was." My heart quickened, moved by her openness. "You're not alone anymore," I assured her gently. Lydia stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "No, not here. But what happens when we go back? I'm still your boss, you're still my assistant. Our worlds don't align easily." I sighed softly, acknowledging the painful truth in her words. "I've thought about that too, but maybe we've changed. Maybe being here has shown us what's truly important." She looked away for a moment, clearly troubled by the uncertainty ahead. Finally, she spoke again, her voice hesitant but firm. "I don't want to lose this connection we've found, but I'm afraid going back means reverting to what we were separate, isolated again." I reached out instinctively, touching her arm gently, drawing her gaze back to mine. "We don't have to lose it. Not if we choose not to." Lydia's eyes searched mine intensely, seeking reassurance, honesty. What if it's not enough? What if the real world pulls us apart again? "I won't let it," I replied fervently, conviction filling my voice. "Being here has taught me to fight for what matters. You matter, Lydia, more than I ever imagined." A small smile softened her expression, gratitude shining clearly in her eyes. "You've become very important to me too, Jasper," she admitted softly, her voice carrying a warmth I rarely heard from her. We fell silent for a moment, the weight of her admission hanging between us. Finally, I stepped closer, drawing her into a gentle, comforting embrace. She melted into it immediately, leaning against me, her head resting softly on my chest. "I never imagined feeling this again," she murmured softly, vulnerability threading every word. "After my divorce, I promised myself I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me." I held her tighter, determined to reassure her. "You don't have to protect yourself from me. I care about you deeply, Lydia, more than you probably realize." She lifted her head slowly, meeting my gaze with cautious hope. "I've known it for a while," she admitted softly. "I just didn't want to admit it, even to myself." "Me neither," I confessed gently, a small smile forming. "But being here, with only each other, it's changed everything. You're not my boss anymore. Not in my heart. You're someone I can't imagine being without." Lydia's eyes glistened softly, clearly moved by my words. She hesitated briefly, then reached up carefully, touching my cheek gently, her fingers lingering tenderly on my skin. Slowly, almost tentatively, she leaned in, closing the distance between us, her eyes never leaving mine. Our lips met softly, shyly at first, then more deeply as mutual warmth and affection flowed freely. The kiss felt natural, inevitable, the perfect culmination of everything we'd felt silently but left unsaid. We stayed close afterward, our foreheads touching gently, our breaths mingling warmly in the island's tranquil air. Yet, even as our happiness settled around us, another reality lingered inevitable and harsh. Our time here was finite. Rescue would come eventually, pulling us back to responsibilities, expectations, and realities we'd left behind. Lydia broke the comfortable silence, her voice calm but pensive. "What happens when we get back, Jasper?" I exhaled softly, my own concerns mirrored in her eyes. "I don't have all the answers," I admitted honestly, "but I know one thing. I'm not ready to lose you. No matter what comes next, I want to face it together." She nodded slowly, trust shining openly in her gaze. "Together," she repeated softly, embracing the uncertainty ahead. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and purples, we stood quietly side by side, fingers loosely intertwined, our new bond strong yet fragile against the unknown future beyond this island paradise. We both knew challenges awaited trials that would test our budding relationship deeply. Yet, despite the lingering uncertainties, in that serene moment together, hope burned bright within us, offering reassurance that perhaps, just perhaps what we discovered here would prove stronger than anything waiting in the complicated world we'd temporarily escaped. Despite our newfound joy, I knew we couldn't hide from reality forever. As comforting as our island sanctuary had become, the world we belonged to would find us inevitably, and we'd have to face it eventually. One morning, while Lydia rested peacefully in our shelter, I quietly made my way down the beach, carrying the reflective panel I'd found. The metal surface gleamed brightly in the morning sun, its shine capable of signaling help from miles away. With mixed feelings, I positioned it strategically, anchoring it toward the open sea, knowing full well this choice might end our perfect but isolated world. Lydia found me soon after, standing silently near the panel, gazing at the horizon. She approached softly, placing a light hand on my shoulder, sensing my inner conflict. "You've decided?" she asked gently, her voice full of understanding. I nodded, turning slowly to face her. "We can't run forever," I said softly, regret clear in my tone, "no matter how much I'd like to." Lydia sighed softly, sadness and acceptance mingling in her gaze. "I know you're right, Jasper. We have responsibilities, lives waiting. But the thought of leaving..." Her voice faded, and I reached for her hand gently, lacing our fingers together. "I understand," I reassured her, my voice tender but resolute. "But whatever comes next, we'll face it together." A brave small smile curved her lips as she squeezed my hand comfortingly. "Together," she repeated, affirming our unspoken promise. In the days that followed, we savored every possible moment, knowing our time on the island was short. We swam in sun-warmed waters, walked hand in hand along soft sands, and spent evenings wrapped in each other's arms, talking quietly or simply enjoying the comfort of silence. Each instant felt precious, a final gift from this place that had given us both newfound clarity and deep love. At last, on a bright morning, the distant hum of engines shattered our tranquil routine. We rushed out, squinting at the sky to see a rescue aircraft circling above, drawn by the panel's gleam. My heart twisted painfully at the sight. Relief mingled heavily with anxiety as reality rushed toward us. Within hours, a helicopter touched down on the beach, bringing rescuers who tended to us, swiftly checking Lydia's healing wounds and providing fresh water and food. They told us how much time had passed since our disappearance. Weeks had gone by without a trace. As we prepared to board the helicopter, Lydia hesitated, casting a nostalgic glance at our shelter, now little more than a distant dream. Returning home felt surreal. News of our rescue spread like wildfire, and soon our story, with its unconventional romantic undercurrent, became public knowledge. Immediately, we faced intense scrutiny, skepticism, and whispered judgments about our significant age difference and professional roles. Headlines sensationalized our relationship, tabloids speculated mercilessly, and murmurs followed us everywhere. Under this harsh spotlight, Lydia's demeanor shifted dramatically. She reverted quickly to her professional persona, poised, distant, and carefully detached from the emotional connection we'd forged on the island. In public, she kept her distance, answering media questions coolly, repeatedly denying rumors of romantic involvement. Each cold denial felt like a small betrayal. Every indifferent glance in my direction cut deeper than I'd admit. I felt lost, disoriented, heartbroken by the sudden distance Lydia had created. Maybe she regretted it all. Maybe our island romance had been just temporary vulnerability, easily discarded once reality returned. Despite my confusion and pain, I respected her choice, maintaining professional decorum whenever our paths crossed. Though the ache in my chest grew more unbearable by the day. After one particularly frosty public event, where Lydia once again carefully avoided acknowledging me, I finally accepted defeat. That night, packing the few belongings in my small apartment, I prepared to leave the city and start over somewhere else, where painful memories couldn't follow. As I stood alone in the dimly lit room, a soft, hesitant knock sounded at the door, unmistakably familiar. My heart leaped as I opened it slowly, revealing Lydia standing quietly outside. Vulnerability and sincerity etched clearly on her usually guarded face. "Lydia," I said softly, surprise and hope warring painfully inside me. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes searched mine deeply, hesitation clouding her gaze briefly before determination took over. "Jasper," she began gently, her voice steady but raw with honesty. "I can't pretend anymore. I can't live this lie, denying what truly makes me happy." Her words caught me off guard, cautious hope flickering to life in me. "I thought you'd decided to move on," I admitted carefully, my voice trembling slightly. She stepped closer, her expression softening profoundly. "That's what I thought I had to do to protect us both. But the island showed me something I can't ignore. True happiness isn't about appearances or societal expectations. It's about being true to yourself, to your heart." She paused briefly, gathering her courage before continuing with conviction. "My heart is yours, Jasper. Pretending otherwise has only made me realize how much I need you." Emotion overwhelmed me at her sincere confession. I reached out instinctively, drawing her gently into my arms. She leaned into me immediately, relief evident in her trembling breath. "You don't have to hide from me, Lydia," I murmured tenderly. "We'll face everything together, no matter what others say." She lifted her head slowly, holding my gaze steadily, sincerity radiating from her eyes. "I promise you, Jasper, I won't let anything come between us again. You're the only true happiness I've known in years. I can't lose you." A smile curved my lips softly as I cupped her face, brushing her cheek lightly with my thumb. "You won't lose me. I'm here, always." Our lips met again, softly, reaffirming the connection forged in isolation, tested by reality, but ultimately proving stronger than societal expectations or professional roles. In that quiet embrace, uncertainty faded slowly, replaced by hope and unshakable determination to protect and nurture the love we'd discovered against all odds. Standing together under the soft city lights filtering through my window, we silently vowed never to sacrifice authentic happiness for the sake of appearances again. Our love, born of unforeseen circumstances and deepened by adversity, had become the most genuine part of our lives, deserving protection, respect, and the courage to face the world openly and honestly. As we held each other close, Lydia sighed softly, peace finally settling comfortably within her. She murmured tenderly, sincerity filling her voice. "The island gave me something I never thought possible. True love, trust, and someone worth fighting for." I smiled warmly, pulling her closer. "And we'll keep fighting together, always." In the end, our journey taught us that real happiness can only bloom when we embrace vulnerability, shed our facades, and bravely choose authenticity over approval. No matter the future challenges, we'd face them side by side, forever guided by the profound truth we'd uncovered on our isolated paradise. Authentic love is worth every risk, every judgment, every sacrifice. In the twists and turns of a life, often dictated by appearances and the invisible chains of social expectations, the story of Jasper and Lydia reminds us of a poignant truth. True love isn't born in the comfort of familiar routines, but in the raw vulnerability of a heart daring to open. Picture yourself, like them, cast onto a deserted island, where everyday masks, the ruthless boss, and the overlooked assistant crumble under survival's weight. Hierarchy fades. What matters is the fragile trust woven through storms, feverish nights, and stolen glances under moonlight. Lydia, a woman of steel forged by solitary ambitions and divorce scars, learns her walls imprison her more than they protect. Jasper, a young man trapped in a role born of necessity, discovers in her not a superior, but a soulmate whose hidden tenderness lights the shadows of his own grief. Their kiss, timid yet inevitable, isn't a Hollywood ending, but a heart's cry. Real life tests us, wounds us, confronts our deepest fears. And yet, it's in those trials we find the strength to choose authenticity. For what is success without a conspiratorial glance? What do others' judgments weigh against the pure joy of love, defying convention? This lesson, etched in forgotten sands, invites us to wonder, what if today we dropped our armor? What if we reached for the one who scares us, to weave a bond stronger than any storm? Let this story echo in you as a call to emotional boldness, to embrace the unknown, and reap the treasure of deep connection. And now, friends, share with me in the comments, what vulnerability have you dared to face lately, and how has it transformed your life? Your words could inspire countless souls in search. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales that touch the heart, and hit the bell for notifications full of feeling. Together, let's nurture these stories that make us more human. See you soon for more heart adventures.